Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sunday morning with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. I'm Reverend Michelle Buhite, and it is my honor to be the minister of this congregation. We are coming to you live from our homes this morning, and so I am in my home office, so I don't know if you can see. Try not to get too distracted by the books behind me. If you want to know the titles, I can send them to you later. I want to let you know that the chat will remain open in the live YouTube for as long as folks want to continue in conversation. So it is our custom to have coffee and conversation following the service. And as long as you provide your own coffee, we will provide the platform for you to have conversation. I also want to let you know that we will be offering more Zooming opportunities. That's actually how we are being able to be home and live streaming to YouTube. Those involved in the service are Zooming, and we can do Zooms for small groups and for faith development, for youth, or for adults. And so please watch the weekly What's Up Wednesday email blast to find out how you can get involved in some of these Zoom opportunities to be able to be connected during this time when we have to maintain physical distance. And so now let's prepare to join together in worship, and I will sing the Meditation on Breathing by Sarah Dan Jones. I will do 3 repetitions, and just prepare your hearts and breathe and bring yourself fully into this worship experience. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Last week, I taught you a seated movement meditation that is tied to our breathing. And so I invite you to join me in this meditation. I will do it one time through to remind you how it goes. And then I invite you to join me from your own homes. I'm going to back up a little bit. This can be done seated or standing. So the first thing we're going to do is let all the air out, and then breathe into your core. And you're actually going to bring that air and go to the center of your body. And then we'll breathe out, up, and that creates a chalice of our body. We'll breathe in to our hearts. We'll breathe out to bless the world. We'll breathe in to receive blessing, and then we'll breathe out and send that in healing energy to the earth. So let's try it 2 times together. So letting all the air out, and breathe into your core. Exhale up and out. Breathe into your heart. Exhale to bless the world. Breathe in to receive those blessings into your heart. And exhale and release that energy. And one more time. Breathing into your core. Exhale up and out. Breathe into your heart. Exhale to bless the world. Breathe in to receive the blessings. And exhale. Unitarian Universalism is a covenantal faith, not a creedal one. We are more interested in the relationship that we have with one another than we are necessarily in all believing the same things in the same way. Since we are a covenantal faith, this congregation has created a special congregational covenant. It goes like this. Together we promise to gather in compassionate community, to celebrate diversity of thought and unity of spirit, and to seek wholeness for ourselves, our children, and our world. I've asked our Director of Faith Development, Angela Warren, to light our chalice.
We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. How is everyone this morning? The last couple of weeks during the live stream, Reverend Michelle has encouraged us to create sacred spaces within our homes. And so I'd like to show you a few of the items on my altar. First is the chalice, of course. I happen to have a jar of holy water that's actually about 30 years old from a trip that my mother took to Yugoslavia. I have a sacred sage, white sage smudge stick. And Reverend Lisa, does this look familiar? This is a feather that Lisa Pietrangelo gave me when she helped me smudge my house a few years ago. This bowl contains leaves from the white sage that I grew last year, and the bowl belonged to Chelsea's great-grandmother Lois. And I have a couple pebbles. You know, we're big fans of pebbles. One is what I call a love rock because it has an X and an O in the bottom that my friend Marty gave me one day when I was feeling pretty down. And I carry it in my pocket quite a bit. I change it out with this wonder rock. So I'm happy to be able to share these sacred objects with you.
From the Connolly home, I'm going to say a couple of things now, showing you just a couple of things that I have. You actually saw at the beginning a little bit, maybe a portion of our space, although it doesn't usually have a clock in it. But we've taken over a big portion of our of the space that we usually use, have dishes and things on, just to have some sacred things on it. And I thought I'll show you a few of the things. I do have my own bowl. And this bowl sometimes is used to get people to come to dinner, but it's also used to start some rituals. We have a chalice, and this chalice that I leave out, it does not have it, that has a non-real candle on it. So this is a chalice that I purchased at actually Summer Institute that is very important to us, that we usually actually keep on the kitchen table, but I've moved it in here because we're using the kitchen table for a whole lot more. I have this, which is very similar to what many others have, gathering of women, gathering of people, gathering of loved ones. That is an important part of what we do. In the center of this space, I have something that I bought at an art show. It has a saying on it, follow your soul, it knows the way. And that is in the center of it. And then, of course, you know me, those of you who've been here for a while and saw Reverend Tim do a service for our family on Star Wars might imagine that I have Yoda. So that is our sacred space in the Connolly household. And the kids and I will continue to add to it as the weeks go forward. I've been asked to do the testimonial this week for why it's very important to our family to support. And we just upped our pledge by 25% for the coming year, because this is such an important community to us and to me. I came to Unitarian Universalism from another congregation. I moved here, I was recruited here from the University of South Carolina. So I was active in what was then a fellowship in Columbia and became very engaged with the Unitarian Universalism faith, and was actually very close to my reverends there. I had two of them. So that was a very important part of my life. Actually, a sanity keeper for me in South Carolina, where there's not as much spaces where you can fully be a progressive, liberal, vegetarian person who wears Birkenstocks and be safe. So that was important to me there. So there was no choice in my mind. When I arrived, I said, I've got to go to a Unitarian church. So I actually visited Buffalo with my family, and we visited, and literally walking in the door, I knew that UUCA would be my home. We started coming there the September of 2010. Many of you knew that there was some, we were changing the dynamics of our family. There were some custody discussions that were going on. I want to use that word now because we've come to a new space in our family, but it was a hard time, and that this church was so important to me. This church helped us wend our way through some very complicated times. This church is where we had ceremonies for the kids, and Jim, their dad, actually came to them. This church has always held me close. This church is where I've made so many friends, done so many things. I have been held in times of need. I've held people in times of need. And now we're doing different kinds of holding. We're doing holding from here. And so my commitment remains strong. When I think of who my children are right now, I think of lots of things that have happened in their lives. But I think of this community as an important part of what makes my children who they are, what makes their children, my children, into the great beings that they are becoming as they're growing into adulthood. Reverend Michelle is a big part of that. All of you are a big part of that. I brought out two things to show you, different than the home thing, that I just wanted to show you to remind you of the great things that we do in the chalice lighters, but I don't remember what it's called now, but the coming of age, whatever the thing is where the little kids grow up, they both made their own chalices. So I found them because we have them and we bring them out sometimes. But I like this because it's so fun to think of who my children were when they were younger UUs. And so I want to show you first. This is, those of you who know Tate will know, this is what Tate made. You know, she's got the fluffy things, she's got the things, she's got the beautiful things. So this is Tate's version of how she was envisioning celebrating our Unitarian Universalism as a family together. And so I love this because it represents her in that younger stage of her life. And right now she actually really is very excited about being a Unitarian Universalist. And she is scheduled still, we don't know if it's going to happen, she's scheduled still to be part of the group along with her brother to go celebrate Unitarian Universalism with people from around North America in Romania this summer. But I think that we've got this. And then I want to show you Simon's because it's very different and very fun. And they get to be their own people. So Simon made something that has little people going around his chalice. So we have two chalices that were made as part of their growing up here and continuing to be beloved here. And I love that this is where they consider their church home, that they love Reverend Michelle, that they can't imagine not being part of a Christmas service at UUCA, because that's really a big, important part of it. And I can't imagine not being connected to you, even though we've got this new way of connecting. I am excited to learn new ways of connecting by Zoom. I'm excited to run some circles that are similar to this, but we'll be doing them virtually through Zoom. I've been doing a little bit of that with some people around the country. And so I'm looking forward to bringing this to my church community, all of you who I love so much. I want to close this testimonial to why I believe that UUCA is an important part of my life, why I continue to increase my pledges, by reading you something, because I think that it so represents this community. This is a poem by my friend, Terry St. Cloud, who is an artist. She runs Bonsai Arts. And this is a poem that I think totally recommends what we do, totally represents what we do here in many spaces. Gathering closer together, they leaned in further. There was comfort in the group. Fears could be shared, love could be held, and light could be remembered. Blessings to all of you, and I look forward to seeing you in this new space and eventually seeing you in real life again as part of our UUCA community.
And I were little, my mom read to us a lot. She was a super Dr. Seuss reader. She got right into the rhythm, and we really enjoyed those. And the Frog and Toad stories, I know many are familiar with, but not everybody, by Arnold Lobel, were other favorites that we shared very often. And today I'm going to share with you a story within the Frog and Toad series called The Garden. Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog. "It's very nice, but it was hard work." "I wish I had a garden," said Toad. "Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground," said Frog, "and soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. "Now seeds," said Toad, "start growing." Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds didn't start growing. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now seeds, start growing." Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, "Now seeds, start growing." Frog came running up the path. "What's all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You're shouting too much," said Frog. "These poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" said Toad. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow." That night, Toad looked out of his window. "Drat," said Toad. "My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark." Toad went out to his garden with some candles. "I'll read the seeds a story," said Toad. "Then they won't be afraid." Toad read a long story to his seeds. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds. And the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." Then Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. "Toad, Toad, wake up," said Frog. "Look at your garden." Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. "At last," shouted Toad, "my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow." "And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad, "but you were right, Frog. It was very hard work." And I wonder, what was such hard work? Surely not just the planting of the seeds. Maybe it was being patient. Maybe it was coming up with creative ideas to encourage the seeds to grow. Toad didn't know how long he had to wait. During this time, aren't we all being challenged to overcome our fear of not knowing what's next?
Thanks, Angela. We are a large village as the UU Church of Amherst, and this new initiative to be able to bring ourselves into connection through these smaller villages is an important way for us to be together when we need to be physically distanced. So if we were in our church building today, this would be probably the time when we would take up the offering. Obviously that's not possible now, but by next week we might have a mechanism fully in place that you could just right now spontaneously participate in the passing of the plate. For now, I just remind you to honor your pledges. If you haven't yet had an opportunity to make a pledge for the upcoming year, please do that soon. And remember that we do have a challenge in place. For all increases, there is a family who is willing to meet those increases at 100%. And that's pretty amazing, and we're very, very grateful for that. As always, you can go to our website, uuamherst.org, and click on Giving, and you can find ways to support us in that way as well. Our offering response that we do each week when we are together in our physical space, I think is appropriate for us to share even here in our virtual space. We pick fruit from trees we did not plant. We drink water from wells we did not dig. This is as it should be, so long as we dig and plant for those who will come after us. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. This is my cat. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots, hold me close. Wings, set me free. Spirit of life, come to me. Come to me. Well, this is even crazier than live theater, this live Zoom church. So, that you just met my cat Mishka. There are 5 more. Hopefully they won't make an appearance. I'm going to turn things over to Angela so that she can give you a little bit of an update on our villages idea.
As we've been navigating through this strange time of physical isolation, many UUCA groups have been meeting virtually to stay connected. Our board of trustees is having weekly check-ins to make sure they're all keeping up with the pace of change. Faith Development had a team meeting last week and an open house yesterday. Planet Thursday people have met twice. Covenant groups have been transitioning. And we met virtually to prepare this service for you this morning. Another group that's been meeting is our UUCA Village Creation Task Force. I just made that up. You may have heard murmuring about this by now, but we'd like to explain more about the why and how. Each UUCA village will be composed of 10 to 15 people with a designated point person. Maybe they're called the mayors, or maybe the village people. This congregation does have a silly streak after all. Each village will be encouraged to create a web of connectivity. These webs may include an email list, a phone tree, Facebook group, Zoom sessions, texting formats, or any combination of these platforms and others. It's one of the tenets of Unitarian Universalism that each individual is beloved and worthy of care and belonging. And our villages will help us practice this affirmation. Our web can only be strengthened by paying attention. When life resumes some sense of normalcy, the villages will stay in place as networks of support for ride sharing, maybe CSA chairs, neighborhood walks, dog walking partnerships, ice cream sharing, strawberry social sharing in the village of Williamsville here. Wouldn't that be fun? The possibilities are endless as our creativity abounds. The task force has had a few people volunteer as lead village people, but we will need a few more. If you would like to lead or are requested to lead, please consider it sensitively. These individuals will be those charged with reaching out to the members of their village and considering how each person in their village can contribute to make the experience valuable to all and to all of us as the larger congregation gets back together soon. The village groups are going to be reviewed one more time, and when their designated leaders are finalized, they'll be brought together by the task force to discuss the vision. We hope that each and every one of you will find new ways of engaging in beloved community through this new exercise in connectivity and creativity.
I'd like to share a reading with you. The title of the reading is Pestilence, and this was written by Austin Noble Gottler, who is the author of the Fayfolk blog, and this is used with Austin's permission. The worst thing of pestilence is that he drives us apart with his poisoned arrows of disease and sickness. Other calamities, as terrible as they are, have the unique ability to bring people together, to allow some brave few to rise up like a light in the dark, offering help with kindness. But pestilence will have none of this, preferring to keep us alone and cowering in terror as he rides to and fro upon a white horse. We must not let him conquer us, for that road leads to despair. But we must stand united, even if it is only in spirit, help those who need our help, and be there for those who already struggle under the weight of terrible inner darkness. The bonds of friendship and love may not stop pestilence from riding out across the face of the world, but it may yet be our greatest defense against the worst plague of all his arsenal, fear. So friends, how are you doing this week? I will admit to a week of feeling a bit overwhelmed, trying to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. Yesterday, a colleague posted on Facebook that someone he knew just died from the COVID-19 virus. Soon we are all likely to know someone who won't survive the virus, because pestilence doesn't discriminate. As our reading said, other calamities, as terrible as they are, have the unique ability to bring people together, to allow some brave few to rise up like a light in the dark, offering help and kindness. But pestilence will have none of this, preferring to keep us alone and cowering in terror. In this time when we have been advised by some of the most experienced and expert health professionals in the world to isolate, to put ourselves apart, to not gather, we feel more alone. This time of isolation has been described as social distancing, and I am so glad that the language has begun to change around that. You may have noticed that you'll still hear social distancing, but now the language tends to be more of physical distancing. There's this growing understanding that because we are social creatures, to keep ourselves socially distant is actually so detrimental to our well-being. We can be socially connected, like we're doing right now, whether it's being able to see each other through a video, or calling someone on the phone, waving hello to the neighbor who's walking on the other side of the street. We need these social interactions, even when we are physically distant. We are social creatures. We're spiritual creatures. We need connection. That's at the very base of our spirituality. Now, I'm an introvert, and so those of you who share this trait might be thinking, we're fine. Give us alone time anytime. But there's a difference between isolation and solitude. We may function really, really well in solitude, but nobody does well for very long in isolation. We need connection. It's part of how our species has stayed alive, is our ability to connect. We need each other in fundamental and foundational ways. Martin Luther King Jr. described it as a network of mutuality. Our seventh principle describes it as an interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We are social creatures. We are also spiritual creatures. We need to know that we belong to something greater than ourselves. We crave connection. Recently I've been reading Bill Plotkin's book, Nature and the Human Soul, Cultivating Wholeness and Community in a Fragmented World. And I tell you, sometimes it feels like these are more than prophetic voices in sort of being able to speak truth into the world. It feels prophetic as far as looking from the distance of time at our situation. And I like his definition of spirit, because, you know, these words need defining. This is what Plotkin says. By spirit, I mean the single, boundless, and eternal mystery that permeates and animates everything in the universe and yet transcends all. The idea of spirit points to what all people and all things have in common, our shared membership in a single cosmos, each of us a facet of the one being that contains all. We are connected. As Unitarian Universalists, that is a statement of faith. It is the foundation of our spirituality, that essence of everything we are and everything we do. And at this time, Pestilence would like us to forget that. Or worse, to be afraid of connection and to feel completely alone, cowering in terror, filled with despair. So let me return to that reading about Pestilence, because the second half of it has a lot of hope to it. It reads, "We must not let him conquer us, for that road leads to despair. But we must stand united, even if it is only in spirit, help those who need our help, and be there for those who already struggle under the weight of terrible inner darkness. The bonds of friendship and love may not stop pestilence from riding out across the face of the world, but it may yet be our greatest defense against the worst plague of all his arsenal, fear. Our ability to withstand the days to come is dependent upon our sense of belonging and connection. We need not cower, but rather we can stand, be united, and be present to one another. So I have a few helpful hints for shifting from a place of fear to a place of strength and resilience. Number one, and for me it is not only sort of the first of a list, but it is a priority for me. And it might be hard for you. Limit your intake of the news and other virus-related, world pandemic-related media. And by limit, I mean maybe check in once a day for up to 30 minutes. and then turn off the television, watch a movie, go for a walk, do something else. As we take in more and more information, and the information is not changing that quickly. I mean, you really can go several hours without there being any breaking news about this. We need to let it have its space and then have the rest of our life, our world, our ability to think about something other than the effects of this virus in our world, in our community, in our family and friends. Number 2, as you're communicating, assuming that you are maybe writing emails or sending texts or in some other written form, before you push send, particularly if it's an anxious or angry email, just stop and breathe and maybe even save it to your drafts for a little while and then go do something else. Go have a snack, brush the dog or the cat if you can catch it. Do something else and then come back to that and then look at that. I'm using email as an example. You look at that email again. Only I want you to look at it as if you are the recipient, not the sender. And if those words feel hurtful or harmful, don't send it. Our relationships are just too precious for that kind of discord. It might mean giving people a little more slack. You might really think, I need to give them a piece of my mind. Well, maybe keep that piece of your mind and put it to good work doing something else. Number 3, and this is not so much, well, it has a little tip, but it's also kind of informational. When we are feeling fear or shame or attacked in some way, the first part of the brain that is fired up is the amygdala. And sometimes people refer to that as the reptile brain. It's our early brain. That's where the flight, fight, and freeze response comes from. And so that part of our brain is rather reactionary and can sort of get spinning into a loop. And if what we're feeling is fear or shame or attacked, that loop is just not very productive. Now, author and researcher Brene Brown, in one of her books, relates a story of someone who was at one of her seminars and said, when I find myself sort of spiraling into that fear, that flight or fight or freeze response, or I'm feeling deep shame, this person said, what I do is I tap myself on the forehead and I say, pain, pain, pain. Okay, so first of all, you're not tapping your head that hard. You're not creating pain. What you're doing is you're allowing the prefrontal cortex to come back online. You're using your words, which is something that the amygdala, the reptile brain, doesn't deal in words. It deals in emotions. So you are bringing your logical, responsible part of your brain back into activity by naming a thing, using words, bringing us to a higher functioning. So in this instance, it may not be pain. Maybe if you find yourself really caught up, maybe it's fear. Maybe that's the word. Fear, fear, fear. Bring that thinking part of your brain back online, and you won't get sucked into those really deep and it's sometimes scary feeling emotions. So that's a tip I'm channeling to you from Brene Brown. Read her books, she's awesome. So number 4 is a reminder that where shame looks backward and like says, oh, why did I do that? I can't believe I did that thing or said that thing. Fear projects forward. Fear is full of what ifs. And those what ifs rob us of our true present. And the present is all we can really manage. So a thing, when I'm feeling anxious and I'm noticing that sort of, I feel it as a sort of a fluttery feeling right in the upper chest, and I feel, I don't know, fluttery, like I can't relax. When that happens for me, I realize that this anxiety is actually creating kind of an out-of-body experience. I don't even feel like I'm inside myself. And so what I do is I rub my arms. I get up and I walk. I might clap my hands, but rubbing of the arms is a quieter, less disruptive thing for the rest of your household. But it puts me back in my body, and it helps me to be present, because that anxiety can really just spin you out, and it's hard to bring yourself back in once you've let that anxiety take you. And so that's just a thing I've learned. Get back in your body. And then number 5, and it's not a surprise that I would say this, reach out. Reach out. Remember that we can choose friendship over fear. So reach out, call a friend, write a letter, do some artwork. Oh, here's an idea. So you can download the April Forward, our church newsletter, which just went out a day or so ago, and you can read about a participatory art project that one of our young adults is working on, and then email or mail in your contribution to the project. You'll be helping someone, just like we read in that reading, and you'll be using your mind for positive creativity instead of fearful projections and what-ifs. So Angela shared with us a story this morning about Frog and Toad. Frog gave Toad seeds for his garden. I'm going to call those seeds of hope. And Toad wanted that hope instantaneously. I'm a little like Toad. And so he dumps the seeds on the ground and okay, poof, there will be a garden of hope. But that's not how gardens work. Seeds must be tended. They must be given the right amount of light and moisture for them to crack open and create new life. So Toad recognized that the lack of activity in his garden was fear. The seeds were frightened into inactivity. And so Toad loved them out of their fear. He lit the candles to dispel the darkness. He read them a story, sang songs, read poems, and played music. He reminded them that although they were separated from him, feeling alone in the cold, dark soil, they were never really alone. He was there, and he cared about their physical and spiritual well-being. I may have projected a little bit there. But all of this sounds like what we have together in this space, in this virtual space, in this moment when we can't be physically together, but our connection remains strong. We love one another into wholeness. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. Let's take a moment to breathe and align our hearts together. So I invite you to take 3 really deep aligning breaths. As we think about those to include in our circle of compassion and concern, may we remember all those who are in harm's way as they tend to our most basic needs. The medical professionals, the cleaning and cooking staff in hospitals, those who are making sure that our children are fed truck drivers and grocers, food deliverers, pharmacists, teachers, the heroes, and the Good Samaritans. May we also remember those who are most vulnerable among us, the ill, the lonely, the homeless, the newly and chronically unemployed, those experiencing hunger and food insecurity, the fearful, the hopeless, the imprisoned, the dying. In the midst of grief and uncertainty, make room for joy, care, and compassion. May each of us know that we are held in a love beyond our understanding. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in that love. I've asked Angela to extinguish our chalice.
Extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Travel light and travel easy, till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. For our benediction today, I want to share with you something that came across my Facebook feed from Uplift Connect. When you go out and see the empty streets, the empty stadiums, the empty train platforms, don't say to yourself, it looks like the end of the world. What you are seeing is love in action. What you're seeing in the negative space is how much we do care for each other, for our grandparents, for our immunocompromised siblings, for people we will never meet. People will lose their jobs over this. Some will lose their businesses, and some will lose their lives. All the more reason to take a moment when you are out on a walk or on your way to the store or just watching the news to look into the emptiness and marvel at all of that love. Let it fill you and sustain you. It isn't the end of the world. It is the most remarkable act of global solidarity we may ever witness. Be well, my friends, and reach out. You are not alone, and you are deeply loved. Be well. Blah, 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah. See my mug?
Can you not see?
Oh, I see. Hi.
Because I pinned you. See, it's interesting because I pinned you, so, oh, there's dogs coming down.
Shell, which I haven't done myself because Michelle has just sucked mine into hers and run the clicker physically.
Stop.
And I'm like, where where is the button? That's,
just
I mean, it seems like it should be so simple.
relax.
So, Michelle, you're gonna be showing PowerPoints?
Ow, I'm not. The wind rise in the sea. This is my cat. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice.